Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top-down shooter tutorial. In today's episode we're going to be adding a firing animation. It's going to be a placeholder fire animation, so it's going to look pretty disgusting, but that's absolutely fine. You can switch it out later. Currently when we fire, there's no animation. That kind of sucks. I'll show you what I've done. I made a little firing animation. I literally just went in here, copied the frame a bunch of times, and did a little animation like this. It looks pretty terrible. That's absolutely fine. Oh, don't want a blank frame on the end. Looks like this. We're going to change it later, obviously. But for the time being, this is our firing animation for our M4A1, which is the rifle. Alright, we're just going to get straight into it, to be honest. I have seen better animations, but that's fine. I'm not an animator, so don't hate on me. First thing we're going to do is we're going to actually change kind of the way our player works. I actually did this before. So before, you might have seen that we had the mask player. Let me switch this back to what it was before, sorry. I didn't realize I changed it. Okay, before we had this, our mask was same as sprite, and our mask was this blue rectangle. And we just had that for collisions. We're actually going to not use this system. We're actually going to use the collision mask system that GameMaker offers. And we're going to manually select the blue rectangle. And for the player sprite, we can just put whatever we want right now. Probably just the idle of the gun. Like that. And then we also, because we're doing this now, we're actually using the instance's sprite. We want to come in here and we want to make sure this is sprite index in the draw. So before we were just drawing, I believe it was like the current weapon.sprite or whatever. Now we want to draw the sprite index instead. So we're just going to draw whatever sprite this object has. There's a lot of ways to do it. You don't have to do it this way, but I'm just going to do it this way. So if we have any issues later, we can switch it, but I'm pretty sure this way will work. All right. Yes, we're going to add some enums. You guys don't know what an enum is. It is, instead of using numbers for variables, like for example, let's say you had different weapons. Like at the moment, our weapons are IDs. So weapon 0, but you might be like, what is weapon 0, right? Instead of writing 0, if you make enums, you can sort of name the numbers, if that makes sense. So let's say this is rifle. It'd be much easier if we wrote rifle here. Or not in angle, in weapon ID probably. So that would make a lot more sense if weapon ID is rifle. So if we make an enum, we're not going to do it for the weapon IDs right now. I'll do that in a bit. But for our states of our players, we can do the same kind of thing where we do enum state. And then, for example, we're going to have the state idle. And we're going to have the state firing. And we're going to have the state reloading. And these are sort of the states for our animations. So our character knows what it's doing. And now these are essentially the same as 0, 1, and 2. That's what these are. They are just the numbers. It's just like we've created a word that if we type it in our code, GameMaker will just read as a number, if that makes sense. So what we can do is we can do current state equals state.idle, because that's probably the starting state, I would imagine. And then what we can do is, I'm actually going to change, there's a lot of ways to do this. Feel free to do it how you want, but I'm actually just going to change the sprite every single frame, which just seems kind of stupid, but it's fine. We're just going to go in that drawer and write sprite index equals. And then what we want to do actually, instead of changing it straight away, we want to put in a switch statement. So we go switch current state. And then based on the current state, so if it's idle, we do such. I'm just going to copy this and press Control D. That's like half of my code is just pressing Control D. We have state, idle, state, firing, and state reloading. Cool. We've got 3 different animation states. These are probably the only states we need, I would imagine. At least for the time being. Maybe we have like a player death state or something like that. I'm not sure. But for the time being, idle, firing, reloading, awesome. We're just going to change the sprite. This is probably just the easiest way to do it. Is it the most efficient way? Not probably not, but that's fine. Doesn't matter. It's good enough. I will accept good enough. Yeah, so what do we want to set the sprite index to? So the sprite index that we're setting depends on the actual weapon that we're holding. So it's going to be current weapon. I think it's current gun. What did we... Oh, it's just weapon. Okay. It equals weapon dot... And then we can choose the weapon sprite. I believe... I'll change it to sprite idle. That might make more sense. Case firing, we're going to do weapon.sprite firing. And case reloading, we're going to do reloading. It's fairly simple. So we need to adjust our struct, that is the weapon, and that's found in our object control here. So you can see here, this is basically where we've set up our structs in one of the previous videos. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already. And we've created this struct for each weapon, and the struct just contains information about the current gun, basically, whatever weapon it is. And so we're actually going to change sprite to... We're going to change some of these. So this should be sprite idle. And we're going to add 2 more, which is, as you can imagine, spoilers. It's firing and it's reloading. And then I'm just going to be lazy and I'm just going to write I, F, R. Hopefully I don't get confused later with those. I'm sure I'll be fine. I, F, and R. So we're just adding the arguments here. And then we're going to have to pass in 3. Instead of passing in 1 sprite, we're going to pass in 3 different sprites. So we're going to go... We have a lot of arguments in our function here. I think GameMaker has a maximum amount of arguments you can add. I don't know what that number is, but just from memory, I feel like it has a maximum, but there is a way to get around it. So unless they changed it, they might not have that anymore. Not sure. No idea. But anyways, we're going to... I'm just setting the pistol and firing and reloading to the M4A1 idle. So just as a placeholder. And then we're going to make sure that the firing animation is actually the firing animation. And the reloading is just going to be idle because we haven't done the reloading animation yet. That's fine. So now our weapon knows what its firing animation should be. And we can, in the player, because the player has a weapon struct that it's basically stored, that's been given from the controller, we can actually grab each of these sprites out depending on the state of our player. So depending on the state, we can grab the yada, yada, yada. We can change our sprite. Long story short, we can change our sprite to whatever it needs to be based on the weapon we're holding and based on the state. And then we're just going to draw the sprite. We don't want to draw... Oh, let me think. So this is going to draw -1 for the sub image, which means it's going to draw the default frame, which could be good. So right now, I'm actually testing if this works. It won't do anything actually. I'm about. Okay, I'm not changing the state. So we got to change the state when we fire. So if we come down, okay, so we come down to bullet firing. When we fire the bullet, we want to change our state. So current state equals state.firing. Beautiful. And now we will change this into the firing state. Awesome. Which just means we're going to, the state isn't actually, this state, I could have wrote animation state. It's probably what it's smarter. It's not really the state of the player. It's the state of what its sprite is. But you can see if we fire, now we're in the firing animation, and now we need to code away to get out of the firing animation. So we go into the firing animation, and when do we want to go out of the firing animation? There is an inbuilt argument in GameMaker called animation end. But I don't trust it, so I'm not going to use it. I've had some weird bugs with it, so I'm going to... Right, we're going to write our own animation end, basically, which all we have to do is we just check... After we've drawn, we're just going to check that we're on the last frame. And if we're on the last frame of our animation, then we're going to just go back to the idle animation. So at least for the time being, all of our animations, we don't want them to loop. The firing animation, we want it to, after you fire a bullet and the animation plays, we want it to go back to the idle animation. And that's the same with reloading. We don't want the reloading animation to loop. So at least for the time being, we can do it in this way where if any animation ends, it just goes back to the idle animation. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to check. So to get the current frame that we're on, you look at image index. And that's going to tell us which frame we're on. And we're going to check if image index is equals to image number, which I believe image number is, if I double check, should tell us. Oh, never mind. Okay, we've got no internet. Image number, pretty sure image number is the number of frames that we have in our current animation or our current sprite. So we can do if image index equals to image number. It's actually incorrect. It should be if it equals image number minus 1. So if we have two different frames in our animation, then the highest possible image index is going to be 1. But the image number is going to be 2. So we want to make it so if we're on the last frame, which is going to be image number minus 1, that'll be the ID of 1, because each of the image indexes are kind of like a list. They're labeled 0, 1, 2, 3, kind of like that. They start from 0. So we want to have a minus 1 there. Image number. In GameMaker code, you'll write minus 1 a lot, because a lot of the functions return like the functions for sizes of stuff and whatnot. I mean, in coding in general, a lot of the size functions are going to return a number telling you how many things, how many elements in a list, how many elements in whatever. And they're usually going to be 1 higher than the maximum accessible element, right? Just because the elements start at 0 in code. So we're going to go if image index equals, so if we're on the last frame, then we're going to write current state. Hopefully this works. Pretty sure it'll work. Yep, so from the last frame, we're going to go back to... Now, I've done this after we draw the sprite, because we still want to draw the final frame, right? We want to draw the final frame. We don't want to not draw the final frame. So I've done this... Just keep in mind, if you want to draw the final frame of each animation, you want to put this at the end. It's very important. Okay, boom. It actually works pretty well. It actually doesn't look as bad. It doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to look, if I'm completely honest with you. And you can see that every bullet that fires, it pops off the animation, goes back to the idle state. That's quite good, actually. I'm going to increase the fire rate just so you can see that if the fire rate is faster than the animation speed. Actually... Okay, there is one more thing we have to do. So when we fire, we need to make sure, so in here somewhere, current state equals state firing. And then we also want to set the image index to 0, because we want the firing animation to restart. That should work. We'll see if that works or not. We'll find out. It's possible it doesn't, but I believe it will. So what's the other thing? Oh, yeah, so it's going to make it so you fire faster. So where did I put the firing cooldown? How have I done this? I think I literally just have, I literally just have a variable here. Let's make the firing cooldown 3, which means that every 3 frames we can fire. And our animation is 6 frames. So we should be able to see the... Okay, so... Jesus Christ. Okay, but you can clearly see that it's that because it's vibrating, you can clearly see that that's a lot more bullets than I thought it was going to be, I'll be honest. You can clearly see this is like World War II invention of the machine gun. You can clearly see that the animation's resetting properly. Like, it's not just playing it regularly. But if I shoot once, you can see it does the whole animation. But if I'm non-stop firing, it's constantly resetting. Okay, that's way too many bullets. Let's make this a bit more reasonable. 5. It's still a lot of bullets, man. I think it's just because our bullet speed's really slow. So it just becomes a line, a yellow line. But yeah, you can see that that works. And that's not bad. We just have to do the same thing for each of the other, a bit fucking weird. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. I'm trying not to swear in these videos, but it's a bit bizarre, I would say. Very bizarre, but it works. So that's absolutely beautiful. Also, yeah, so it's really easy if we want to add it for the pistol, for example. You just do the same thing. We just duplicate. I'll just do this really quickly. I'll do a firing animation. We haven't done reloading. I'll probably do reloading in the next episode. And reloading will be super easy. And because we already set up that animation system, and to do reloading, we just set the animation to we set the player state to reloading state, and that's as easy as it's going to be. We can also even use the animation length of the reload if we want. We can use the reloading. I don't know if we're going to do this or not. It kind of depends on how you want your game, but you can actually just use the animation reload to do the reload. So like when the animation ends, it just restores all the bullets in your gun. You can do that. I don't know if that's the best way to do it. Probably not. You'd probably want the bullets in the gun earlier than the reload. I don't know. Depends how you want to do it, but let's just say, for example, I'm just going to just the right sprite that I'm editing. Make sure you edit the right. If you right-click duplicate, you're not automatically going to be on the correct sprite. So make sure you double-click to get to the right sprite. So make sure you're on sprite firing. I'm actually just going to make him red. Instead of animating this guy, I'm going to make my man's red. And then we'll make the animation like, how many frames? 7 frames. We'll make him red. And then we'll make him yellow as well on the last frame, just to check that the last frame's actually getting drawn. So we'll see if this works. Also, with the system that we've done for the firing, you should be able to change the frames per second here, I'm pretty sure. And it should still work. I might try that, actually. I'll try that in 1 second. I'll just double check that everything's working correctly. So we'll see here. If we want to add a new animation, we got fire, pistol firing. We would go into the controller, which has all the animations. We go in here and we'd go into, instead of pistol idle, we'll change this one to pistol firing for the firing animation. And in theory, if I switch to my pistol, I go red, and you can see that I flash yellow at the end, which is showing that it is in fact drawing the last frame, which